culture. I'm not trying to get back in with anything. I'm just breaking down fights. So I think if you're going to be crazy enough to take this fight again, I think he has the right mental approach. He's got to approach it this way. Otherwise, if you go into a fight with any kind of doubt at all, you're going to, only be doing harm to yourself. Now, that didn't mean that I now think that Wilder's going to win the fight. Now you're going to force me to give my opinion. I think Wilder's going to get absolutely eviscerated in the fight. I think he's going to get smoked to where he's actually never going to be the same again, because he took a bad beating the first time around, the second time around. The first time, I thought Fury outpointed him. The second time around, he took a bad beating that usually guys will change a lot of guys in general. So you're to ask for that kind of beating again, I don't see where he's going. Here's the thing. Wilder doesn't know how to fight going backwards. You're not going to figure out a way to fight going backwards. You're not going to mentally, psychologically change yourself to that point where you're going to, and physically change yourself to that point where you're going to figure out a way to fight this guy going backwards. Fury will back you up. And when Fury is backing you up, he's going to bully you. Fury is from a culture that is just, they really support that masculine force, that they have a fighting culture. Gypsies have a bare knuckle culture within their culture. They raise these kind of men. Fighting is part of their culture. Fighting is part of who they are, part of their DNA. So none of this BS that Wilder keeps preaching about, pushing the race issue and pushing the cheating issue and pushing the Mark Villan was a traitor issue. None of that is going to matter to Tyson Fury. He's going to execute a game plan against you. And I don't think Wilder can handle that kind of opponent. I don't think Wilder knows how to fight backing up. There's no shot. And if he proves me wrong, more power to him. But what is going to happen when you're starting to get backed up by Fury again, and he's putting a beating on you, and you can't blame white privilege. Fury's not bigger than you because of his white privilege. Fury's bigger than you because he's genetically a bigger guy, and he knows how to fight that way. So, for me, I just want to, make sure I don't get misunderstood. I think Wilder is true to himself by having this in denial mentality. I think he is in denial. I think he's absolutely in denial because, like I said, I think he's going to get the living shit beat out of him. But for him to go into the fight, he can't go into the fight thinking what I'm saying. He can't do that. Otherwise, the fight is pointless. The fact that Wilder is going into the fight thinking this way, I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem. I have a problem with him bringing up the race issue every second. That I have a problem with. But everything else, I don't have a problem with. Plus, like I said, at the end of the day, it's on his hands. He's got to handle it or not handle it.
Wow. Those were the words of Paulie Malanaggie as he broke down his thoughts on Wilder. Now, like Paulie, hate Paulie, hear Paulie, deny Paulie. Paulie is going to be Paulie. But regardless of who it is, was he telling the truth? And what is true is Wilder can't fight going backwards. He can't. And that was the problem. That was the whole game plan. Fury coming in bigger, coming in with more of a aggressive approach, and the aggressive attack with his game plan forced Wilder to go backwards. Therefore, Wilder can't fight going backwards. Therefore, Tyson Fury did whatever he wanted to do. If you notice and you look at that fight, Wilder threw one, maybe a jab, or maybe a right hand, maybe. But the right hands were more accurate than the jab. Every time he threw the jab, when he threw the right, if you notice, Wilder had to come forward. He had to be in a forward formation to get the momentum to throw that punch. I think that, it comes from his upper body because he that's where he carries his muscle, and I think that's where he carries his strength. So when he throws that punch, I think that's where that power comes from. Legs spread apart, got him. You know what I mean? But it comes from here. That's where he generates that power from, Now, when he was going backwards, though, it was another story. He threw a jab. Fury slipped it or or countered it and landed his own jab. So it's a situation where, like Paulie said, Wilder can't fight going backwards, and you're not going to teach someone overnight how to fight going backwards. That may be true. Now, as far as Wilder being in denial, I like how Paulie mentioned that, because Paulie made it known, like, hey, Wilder has to think like he's thinking, because if he thought that this guy really did get the better of him because he was the better man, there may be a form of doubt there, and that kind of doubt Wilder don't need. You know what I mean? And it is a good strategy. Psych yourself out. No, he did cheat you. Because if he didn't cheat you, your ass is mincemeat. As you heard him say, I think he's going to get obliterated. and then he won't be the same. But I don't know if he'll get obliterated. I'll tell you this. If he does get obliterated, he shouldn't be the same. Because if you had to use an excuse for each and every time you lost, looked bad, whatever, Wilder has used it. For any excuse that he had to use his whole career, Wilder has used up his amount of excuses for the rest of his career. Wilder can never say what happened and this happened. So if he loses again, he can't say that. Wilder is eating up the privilege of using this as a excuse, or using this particular loss as all these excuses pour in. You know, you heard of COVID now. Come on, COVID. And that's coming from a Wilder channel. So they're still trying to figure out that, or what happened with Wilder. And since they're still trying to come up with shit, you know what that tells us? That tells us they honestly don't know what the hell was wrong with Wilder. They don't know. They're just looking for other reasons or other possibilities of why or what happened with Wilder that night. So they still don't know. So if you don't know, if you're so certain on this happened like he said it is, why are you still looking for other things to come up with? Because if you had to come up with them, that means you don't believe the bulk of shit that he put out last time through other little channels. You know what I'm saying? And those channels that let these out, they taught and spoke for Wilder when Wilder was in exile. And the question was, why the hell was he in exile? Why wasn't he the ringleader of that? And they were just sharing the information that he said. Instead, he said it in private and told other people about it. And then they leaked out with him not saying nothing. So there was no verification. That by itself was straight up chicken shit, because you don't let a channel say something that you won't verify. You know what I mean? And then plus you're underground, and what you underground for? You know what I mean? Why did you get so silent and you're not a silent person? He ain't Anthony Joshua. That's some shit Anthony Joshua would have done. You know what I'm saying? Because he don't really talk as much public-wise. Wilder does, though. So why did Wilder do a whole 360? Because something was wrong. Something else was going on. But back to Paulie. You know, he's tired of doing the race card. Well, it's kind of hard for Paulie saying that, because Paulie pulled the race card shit. That's why he got into trouble, if you guys can remember. You know, and he was talking about, oh, well, black African-American fighters are not what they used to be anymore and shit like that. Like, first of all, for you to bring up the idea of a bulk of people not being any good just because they're the bulk of people, that's stereotyping, and then you're bringing in race. You're race baiting right there. So you can't really overlook that. That's why I said, you know, from Paulie said, I'm tired of it. Well, hey, you shouldn't have said what you said, because you contribute to that same community of people that think like that when you do that and you say that. Not saying that Paulie doesn't know what the hell he's talking about, because he clearly knows boxing. He's like probably one of the best commentators that I've probably ever seen, if you're going to do that. And then he talks like the Micro Machine Man that talks real fast like this. You know, back in the 80s. You guys will know what I'm talking about if you grew up in those days. But he does know what he's talking about. He's a boxer, and he's an his former champion, 2-time champion, and he talks boxing. But he's right. Wilder has to believe that he was cheated, because if not, there would be no excuse for him getting beat. Besides, he was not the better man that night. And what will ensure us for him to win the next fight if that guy was better than him that night? See what I'm saying? So it's an interesting read. It's interesting to hear Paulie say that. I don't know if he'll get obliterated, but if he can't fight going backwards and Tyson Fury's able to push him back, he may be in trouble. But I will add this in closing. If I don't know what their game plan is, I like the footage. And if the footage is evidence that Wilder's trying, he's trying. You know what I'm saying? He's making an effort, and and people say, "Oh, I haven't seen this since the Stavern." Man, I ain't never seen this ever. Wilder ain't never trained this hard. I don't care what you say. He ain't trained this hard. He ain't. So I think this is the hardest I ever seen him train. And if that's the case, they need to work on some bigger guys pushing him backwards and see how he can react to that type of pressure. Okay, to see if he is successful with fight going backwards. But it is difficult to do something or to attempt something that you've never done and you don't have the capability of doing. I don't know how to do backflips, so you can't teach me to do backflips when someone says action, right? Because I don't know how to do that. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, you guys tell me what you think about Paulie Malanaggi's statements. Of course, please subscribe. And you guys been Counterpunch. Peace.